Welcome to this lesson. This is where we're going to start the actual concepts of JavaScript, and this lesson is going to be about variables and data types. Variables are very important parts of a JavaScript code because without variables you can't do anything. You can't do calculations, you can't retrieve values, give values, you can do nothing without variables. So they are the backbones of a JavaScript code, of pretty much every programming language actually. So we're going to be talking about variables in this particular lesson. So what are variables? They are actually containers of information. They store certain values, be it numbers, characters, strings, and a lot more other values. There are also Boolean values, which is basically true or false. So they contain information. So to create or declare, as it's said in the technical terms, so to declare a variable, you need to use a keyword called var. So keywords are reserved words, that is predefined words that were created with the JavaScript language. They mean something. So when we say var, it means it's a variable, so we are creating a variable. So after you say var, then you could write a variable's name. There are certain rules to writing a variable's name though, so let me just list them quickly. So the first rule is the first character of the name. So first character in here, let's say my variable name is apple, so var apple. So I've created a variable apple. So the first rule is the first character of this A. It could be either an alphabet or an underscore or a pound sign. Okay, so these are the three allowed first characters of a variable. You can't use anything else. You can't use numbers, you can't use pound signs. So sorry, this is a dollar sign, so you can't use pound signs, you can't use comma, no other special characters, just these three types of characters. Okay, and then the rest of the characters, the rest of the characters, they can be anything from alphabets, numbers, again underscore, and the dollar sign. Even here you can't use any other special characters like plus sign, minus sign, nothing. So only these four are allowed for the rest of the characters. And then the third rule is variables are case sensitive. Case sensitive as in, so I've written var apple, so that's a variable. But what if I create another variable that says var apple but with a capital A? That's a new variable, because since variables are case sensitive, a small letter and a capital letter make the difference between variables that actually sound similar. Okay, so that's the third rule. And then the fourth rule, very important rule, is reserved words. Reserved words or keywords can never be used as variables, and if you try to, you'll get errors. You won't get the output you want. So in this case, we already started with one reserved word, var, right? So if I create something like var, if I try to declare var as a variable, I'd actually get an error. See, expected an identifier and instead saw var, a reserved word. See, so that's an error. This won't work. So I can't use reserved words either. We've just come across one reserved word right now, but as we start covering other concepts, you'll notice other reserved words like if, else, and then there are while, for. There are multiple reserved words in JavaScript. We'll cover a couple of them in this module. So taking all of these rules into account, let's create some allowed variables now. Okay, so one of them could be underscore, since the first character could be underscore, and then apple. I could also create a variable like app underscore le and then 1 2, since number can be anything other than the first character. And then I could do it like dollar apple, and then what else? Just apple. We already created that. So what's not allowed? So this won't be allowed. You got an error here because the first character of this variable is a number, and even if we create something like this, that won't be allowed either. Okay, so with a software like brackets, it's very easy to know the difference between something that's allowed and not allowed. If you can see here, these variables are allowed, and as such they have a different color from this variable which is not allowed. So these are simple ways to know if you're doing things right or not. So that's it for variables, for declaring variables, not the whole concept. Okay, also I wanted to talk about semicolons. every line in a JavaScript file should include a semicolon like this. It's pretty similar to the CSS file. We covered it in the CSS topic. So if there is no semicolon in here, this won't be a completed statement. You wouldn't have completed declaring Apple at all. Okay? There are exceptions, of course, like with curly braces, starting of loops, etc., like you had with the style.css, for example. In the style, these lines didn't need to have semicolons, am I right? So similarly, there are certain exceptions in your JavaScript file as well, and you'll see those as we go on, but as such, every completed line of code should compulsorily have semicolons. Alright, so now that we've seen how to declare a variable name, let's see how we can assign a value to it. After all, they are holders of information, so we need to make them hold information, right? So a variable can hold multiple values, as in different types of values. So it can hold a string. String could be any string of characters is called a string. For example, let's say, so this is a string of characters, so this is a string. So it can hold a string, it can hold a number, a decimal point number, or a whole number like this or this, and then it could also hold Boolean values. Boolean values are just two values, false and true. So these are some of the different types of values that a variable can hold. So let's create a variable. We've already created the variable Apple. Let me just delete all of these. Okay, so I'm going to create another variable called fruit, and I'm going to assign it a string. Okay, so what's a string? It's a string of characters. So I'm going to assign it a value Apple. Okay, so here we've created a variable named fruit and we've assigned it a string value Apple. As you can see, the string has two quotes around it like this. So that's necessary for every string. If you don't include quotes around a string, then it won't be considered as a string. But numbers don't need quotes though, but strings, they definitely do. So this quote can either be a double quote or a single quote. So if you write it like this, this is valid as well. So both work the same. Then let's go for numbers. So let me create another variable called num. I'll assign it a value called 5. Okay, so 5, that's a whole number. So as I told you, you can also assign whole numbers for your variables. And then let me try assigning a decimal point number to my variable num1. Okay, so this is allowed as well. So it can either be a whole number or a decimal point number. Finally, let's go for Boolean values. That's true or false. So you can assign either true or false to your variable, and those would be considered the Boolean values of your variable. So for example, var is here is equal to true, or you could change it to false as well. Okay, so that's the Boolean value. But do you see here? Do you see how I wrote this variable in here? It has two words, is and here. And also I capitalized the first letter of the second word, that is H. So why did I do that? I did this so it's more easily readable. This type of naming convention is actually called camel casing. Okay, so this is an accepted naming convention in the programming world. So where the first word is all small letters like is, and then for the second word, the first letter is capitalized, and so on. So if a variable has 3 words, let's say is here now, so every word after the first word would have the first character capitalized. Okay, so that's called camel casing. When you write it like this, the words are easier to read. So instead of writing it like this, these aren't very good to read now, is it? I can't even differentiate the different words, but here I can, so that's why it's called a camel. Okay, so it starts small, and then there's a hump here, and then there's another hump here, like a camel's hump. So that's why it's called camel casing. So in our JavaScript code, we'll be following the camel casing naming convention as well. And I urge you to follow the same convention because pretty much every big programming language out there has a similar naming convention, the camel casing naming convention. Okay. Alright, so that's it for the variables lesson. And in the next lesson, let's look at some of what you can do with the variables, as in calculations, getting outputs, and so on and so forth. So I'll see you there.